All right, what's up, everybody? Emily DePussis here from Rental Rookie. I'm jumping in the group tonight at 8 o'clock to do our fourth day of our 5-day challenge. Hard to believe that we are already nearing the end of this 5-day challenge. It's been super great jumping in here with you guys every night. I'm excited to be back here with you all today, and excited for tonight's training, because tonight's training is kind of the big dance. If you read the email I sent out today, I'm a big college basketball fan, so the big dance reference was definitely to that. But we've made it to the big dance of our challenge this week, where I'm actually going to be running you through an actual analysis of exactly what I do week in and week out. So there's a couple ways that we can go about it tonight. You can follow along and do it with me if you want on your own copy of the analyzer. You can just kind of watch while I go through it tonight, and then try it on your own on another time. However you want to go about it is fine by me, but just know that I will be kind of walking you through how I do it. I will be, switching back and forth between pages and links and things like that. So just kind of bear with me there, because I want this to be as authentic as possible. So I want you to kind of see exactly how I do it. So I will be kind of jumping back and forth between different web pages and things like that. But a couple housekeeping things that I want to go over today. I actually have the challenge workbook up right now. If you haven't grabbed that, you can head on over to rentalrookie.com/challenge workbook and grab your copy of it. In that workbook is the link to our basic free property analyzer. I also put it in the link in last night's training. And it's also in the kind of post above the video for this live video. So you can click on that bit.ly link, and that will take you to the property analyzer. So when you do click on that, and I'll kind of go right through it with you. If you click on that bit.ly link, it takes you to the property analyzer. This is our basic version of the property analyzer. We do have a more advanced pro version of our analyzer, which I will talk to you about a little bit. I'll actually give you a little sneak peek of it too. We do have one of those. If you're a member of our pro community, you get access to that over at Rental Rookie. But for tonight, for all intents and purposes of tonight's training, I'm just going to use the basic property analyzer, because honestly, week in and week out, this is the one that I use. I don't use our pro property analyzer until if I've decided that we're going to move forward with the property. But when I'm just running kind of a quick and dirty, cash on cash, ROI, want to run whatever numbers I have, I actually just throw them in our basic one. So that's the one that I'm going to be using for tonight's training. Now, one thing that I want to say, if you're going along with me right now, or if you're going to do it later, in order for you to be able to make edits to this spreadsheet, because it is a Google Sheet, you need to come up to File, click on File, and also go to Make a Copy. Okay, so File, Make a Copy. Then you'll name it whatever you want to name it here, Rental Rookie Analyzer or Property Analyzer, whatever that is. It'll save to your Google Drive, and then you go ahead and you hit OK, and that will allow you to make edits. I can make edits to this because I'm the master person behind the file. But if you, and if you're here and you've downloaded it before, because it is a free download that we have on our website, then you have to make a copy for yourself in order to make edits. So I can't stress that enough. I get emails about that all the time. So you're going to want to make sure that you do that. So tonight's training, in this property analyzer, there are 3 spreadsheets. So I'll give you a quick tour of that. We have our single family spreadsheet, where we're basically analyzing any kind of single family property. So whether that's a condo, a townhouse, a regular standalone house, whatever that is, this is the spreadsheet that I use for that. I also have a multi-unit spreadsheet that is very, very similar. The only difference is really when you get to the income section, because you collect income for multiple different properties. So you can put that in here for the different units. So we do have that as well. And we also have a student rental spreadsheet, because Kirk and I also invest in student rentals in our portfolio. We have a spreadsheet in here. And again, really the major difference comes to the income section, because with student rentals, we typically collect rent on a per semester, per student basis. So I can already tell I'm going to be out of breath a lot tonight. Per student, per semester basis. So the formulas are already in here to calculate that for the 2 semesters for the school year. So depending on what avenue you're looking, again, student rentals, the multi-unit, we have it go up to 4 units because for residential financing, that will go up to 4 units. Once you get over the 4 unit, if you're looking at a 5 unit, 6 unit, then you're going to start jumping into commercial and things are a little bit different there. So I'm going to go ahead, and I think that was all the housekeeping things that I wanted to go over. Definitely, if you have questions as I'm going, please feel free to throw them into the comment section, and I will get to those throughout the training tonight. Last night, quick review, we went over return on investment, and we talked about exactly what that was. We talked about why it was important. We talked about what the actual formula is to calculate a cash-on-cash return on investment, and then I actually showed you a couple of deals so that you could get a feel for the idea of looking at, a property as a whole and not just getting pigeonholed and focusing on things like the purchase price or the sale price, right? Looking at the overall picture. So tonight we are going to run through, I pulled up, I think this was a listing that I actually showed you the other night. It's a condo. We have a lot of newbie investors who start this way. Good way to start, bad way to start, that's totally up to you. This was our very first true blue rental property that we bought was a condo, actually in this little area. But I figured I wanted to use a listing that had a fair amount of information so we could really kind of fill this the property analyzer as much as possible so you could really get a good idea of what it does for you. So you can see here I went over this the other night. We quickly go through the pictures and see that for the most part, the property is in pretty good condition. Property is in pretty good condition. It is, clean. It looks very clean. Sorry. There you go. Kirk is in here.
And then you can zoom out like
Okay, cool. He came in to tell me to zoom in the screen so that you could see it better. So thank you, Kirk. So here are the pictures. You can see it looks very similar to the property that we had, except we had, like the laminate flooring throughout, and we had the more modern look of the white trim and the gray walls and the darker floor. We also had ceramic tile in the kitchen. I can't quite tell if that is tile or if that's vinyl in this picture. And we had newer cabinets. So, we had a few things there in terms of the property that we just sold. But overall, it's a clean place. I don't know if I would honestly go in and do much to it. I think it looks pretty clean for a rental property. Washer and dryer, you can see all of the utility closet, those sorts of things. So and I'm going through the pictures with you because I am going to decide whether or not, at a glance of the pictures, if I think that we would need to go in and do any kind of light renovations to get it rent ready or to maximize the rent out of it. So that's when I wanted to walk you through the pictures here. So, all right, if I look at list price here, we're looking at $129.9 on the list price. Again, when you know your area, you will be able to be scrolling through listings and see a property, see the basic specs of the property, see the list price, and know whether or not that could potentially be a good deal. So for me, I'm looking at this, and they're listed for $129.9. I know we just sold a property in this same exact unit for $125. So they're not that far off, but I wouldn't go in and offer them full ask. I would definitely come in more around the $125. Again, our property had the kitchen was a little bit more updated than this one. But overall, pretty comparable. So when I'm looking at the analyzer, right, purchase price, I might put to go in around, $124 as my target price. So I go ahead and I type that right into the property analyzer. All right, down payment. I'm looking to buy this as a true blue investment property. It's not a multi-unit, so I'm not going to be able to live in one side and rent out another. I'm going to buy it as a primary rental. So in that case, if I'm going to use financing, I'm going to probably have to put 20% down because in most cases, If you're going to buy a True Blue investment property, you're going to probably go the conventional financing route. That's one of the better options that are out there for you in terms of financing from traditional banking institutions, and that's going to require you 20% down on a single family. It might even require a little bit more when you get into more of the multi-units, but for a single family, you're looking at 20% down. So again, here we go. We got 124 as the purchase price, the target acquisition price. We got 20% down. That tells me that my down payment total is going to be $24,800. So you see, I put in those first two numbers, and this one was automatically calculated. You'll notice as we go through the using the analyzer tonight that the gray shaded boxes are where you actually input information. The white boxes are ones that are automatically calculated for you. So that's another good tip to know, is that you're only inputting information in the gray boxes. The other ones already are formulated for you, so they calculate, so that way you can do this all very, very quickly. It really is just throwing in some numbers. All right, so we're looking at a down payment total of about $24,800. That gives us our base loan amount. Interest rate, I'm going to leave it about 5% right now. Just for, I feel like that's a fairly good average. You might be able to get a little bit lower. 30-year term. So that tells me that my payment with principal is going to be about $533. Closing costs, typically, and this was a question somebody asked last night, or I don't know if they asked last night during the training or if it was shortly after the training, you know, in terms of closing costs, when you're running an analysis, what should you account for? And a lot of times, a good average to kind of stick to is about 3% of the purchase price, right? So you might be able to get it a little bit less than that. You might be able to get it. It might end up costing you a little more, just depending on seller credits and those sorts of things, depending on what you negotiate. But a good rule of thumb is to kind of target 3% of the purchase price. So in that case, you're probably looking at about $3,700 for this property. Annual property tax. So if I go back to that listing, total taxes, $577. So again, this is a good listing. It has that information on there. Taxes are so cheap in that area. That's why we love investing there. And then annual insurance this is always tricky whenever you're just getting started, because you might not have a lot of experience in order to be able to guesstimate, so to speak, to throw some numbers in for kind of the quick and dirty raw analysis. But I will say that, you know, I can tell you, like with some of our properties are single families that have been like condos and townhouses. Our insurance has been anywhere from probably between $150 and $250 for the entire year. When we get into the multis, we have multis that run anywhere from $423, right, might be our lowest insurance, annual insurance premium. And I think one goes up to in the 500s, right? So that's kind of where it is. When you're just getting started, I really recommend calling some of your local insurance companies and maybe even talking to somebody that, I mean, obviously, I assume you have some sort of insurance on something in your life, whether it is a renter's insurance, whether it's a current home that you live in, whether it's car insurance, you know, whatever that is. I would really recommend contacting your insurance agent and just kind of having a chat with them and see, you know, tell them kind of what your plan is, what you're trying to do, what you're looking at, and see if they can give you just kind of an average that you can use when you're running numbers, because you don't want to be coming in here and putting, you know, in this analysis, right, I'm going to put in $200 for annual insurance, and you don't want to be coming in here and putting in $800 because you just have no idea. You don't want to be coming in here and putting $50 because you don't have any idea, right? So because we have experience, I'm able to kind of guesstimate what I would think it would be. But I really recommend when you're just getting started to contact an insurance agent and have a conversation with them, so that they can give you kind of an idea of, you know, what to expect in terms of insurance for the different types of properties. All right, so I'm going to come back down here. Upfront expenses. So some of these things, renovations, it looked pretty good. Honestly, I don't think that I would go in and do too much. I'm going to leave that $250 in there for maybe just some minor things, and maybe honestly just getting it nicely professionally cleaned if everything looks good. But I am going to put a little bit of money in there just in case we run into any little things that we might need to fix, bulbs, light fixtures, blinds. A lot of times you might get properties where the blinds are broken, those sort of things. So I'm going to leave that in there. I'm going to come come back to the vacancy rate here in a minute. And so that gives us a total cash invested of about $29,385. So that includes your down payment, that includes your closing costs, and that includes your expenses that are down here in this block. So making sense so far? Give me a like or a heart so I know that you're kind of following along with me again. What's pretty sweet about this is once you get a feel for the actual spreadsheet itself, it probably takes me a minute to 90 seconds. Once I found a listing and I have the numbers and the information, it literally probably takes me less than 2 minutes to throw all of the information in the spreadsheet and know whether or not a property is something I want to go after. So once you get the feel for it, I'm going kind of slow tonight, but once you get the feel for it, it really will make your life so much easier. And again, whether you use our analyzer or whether you use some of the other calculators that are out there, you just want some sort of calculator to help you. So we come over here, we take a look at the monthly expenses. Again, the white boxes are automatically calculated for you. So you've got principal and interest, you have your breakdown for monthly property tax, breakdown for property insurance. I'm planning on, managing it, so I don't need anything there. Utilities, it's a single family. We always make our single families pay for utilities. In terms of outdoor maintenance, it's in a condo association, so I don't have to attribute anything for that as well. HOA condo fee, I can assume that there's one of those. So here I see the HOA fee is $175 monthly. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to put that in because that's a monthly expense, right? That's not an annual expense. That's a monthly expense. So I'm going to put that in and I'm looking at an all-in of about $772. So once I see that, I'm going to run kind of back over here to my vacancy rate. And in some cases, in this case, I have it as a dollar figure. And what I do a lot of times is I'll just kind of throw in whatever that dollar figure amount is for 1 month. Because like I said, sometimes we have tenants that don't even leave after a year. If we do, typically these properties rent really, really fast. So I wouldn't expect that we would have to even carry probably a month of the payments. But if we did, we kind of accounted for that there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that figure 1 month's kind of total expenses right there in the vacancy rate. All right, so what I can expect for monthly rental income, those properties bring in about $1,000 a month when they're in nice, good, clean condition. That's what we used to charge for our property. So here I'm looking at cash flow of about $228. So that's, again, positive cash flow. That's after all expenses. We're looking at the gross annual income of $12,000. We're looking at a net yearly income after all expenses are paid, $2,733, and that gives us a return on investment of 9.26. So we're just shy under that 10%. So when you look at that, you throw those numbers in, right? And for the most part, we have pretty accurate numbers. The only things we're kind of guesstimating on really are insurance and maybe those closing costs. Again, you could always try to negotiate seller credit in there so that you get some of those closing costs paid for, so it's less money out of your pocket. That's a strategy that we use a lot of times when we're negotiating, a strategy that we talk about in our pro community in our Zero to Property course. We give you a bunch of tips on negotiations and tips for, how to negotiate and make offers. But that's it. You throw those numbers in and you can quickly see overall, you get a pictorial graph here. You see what your ROI is going to be. You see what your monthly cash flow is going to be. And then you as the investor say, okay, this is something that I want to pursue and look into further. Maybe I actually want to go look at it now. Maybe I want to call and get some verification of numbers, or maybe not. So in this case, I look at this and I say 9% and I say no way. So if this was Kirk and I and we were looking at this, analyzing this, which is funny because we just sold one of these for $125, and I'll explain how different our deal looked in this case. But, I would look at this and say no way, because I can expect that to be maybe a tad bit lower, a tad bit higher, to fluctuate a little bit once I start to get a little bit more accurate numbers. I start to include things like CapEx and those sorts of things in my analysis. But at first glance, what you need when you're just sifting through properties and trying to figure out what are potential deals and what aren't is you need a filter. So I always like to say, like, our analyzer is kind of like a search filter on the apps, on Realtor, on Zillow, those apps that are out there. There are the filters where you can go and you can pick your property type and you can put in the, the price range that you're in, or you can the beds and the baths and amenities and all that sort of stuff. You need a filter for looking at rental property, because I will tell you, you are not going to have the time, the energy, anything to be like going after every single deal. In the beginning, when you're just kind of learning your community, you're going to probably run a lot of numbers, and that's good. You want to get really good at running numbers and kind of knowing what to look for, because that's only going to make you a better investor. But like I said last night, everybody has to have, as an investor, that line in the sand ROI, where, like I've said with Kirk and I, it's kind of around 15% for smaller properties, for single families or duplexes. We realize that once you start to get into the commercial, bigger buildings, you're probably looking at a smaller ROI, and you're looking at cap rates and those sorts of things. But when we're looking at single families and small multis, we're looking at about 15%. So I would look at this and I would say, okay, no. It took me not that much time to throw all that information in there to find out that this property isn't worth going after for our goals as investors. Now, if your, goal is around 10%, then maybe this is something you would want to look into a little bit more, because it does look like a good quality, clean property. So, that's kind of the gist of when it comes to actually running numbers. Now, I will tell you that our deal that we had with this property was very, very different, because we spent, oh my goodness, I think we paid $74,500 for that, right? So automatically, when I put that purchase price in, look what happened. Look how different that ROI changed. And that was just the purchase price. I haven't touched anything else, right? So down payment was still 20%. Our interest rate when we bought it, I believe, and I'm doing this off of memory, so I might be off just a little bit, but I think our interest rate was 3.875, right? So again, you drop the interest rate and look at your ROI. It's already going up, right? Our closing costs, we negotiated seller credit, and I think we were maybe around $2,000 for closing costs. So you put that in, and again, it goes up again, right? So on and so forth. You can see how, and we were in just a building over to like just a little bit away from there. So our condo fee was $125, not $175, because it was a different association, even though it was in the same area. So you can see how quickly those numbers change whenever you just quickly make a couple of changes in the analyzer. So, we definitely bought at the right time. You can see, and we bought this in 2012. So you can see how quickly those values have gone up, hence why we decided to sell it, even though it was an awesome property that made us a lot of money. It was just the time to sell because we didn't have to, right? And so we're big proponents of sell when you don't have to. So, that gives you an idea of what this whole property analyzer is all about. And that's it, guys. I mean, it's actually pretty simple. So as stinking intimidating as it seems to run numbers, it actually, once you know what you're looking for in terms of numbers, and you have a vehicle or a tool to be able to run those numbers, it's actually pretty dang simple. And that's what is another great thing about investing in rental property, is it's pretty easy to kind of figure out the predictable income and predictable return on investment that you can expect to get from a rental property. So, this is kind of what it looks like. I wanted to kind of run through. I do want to show you our Pro Property Analyzer. So again, this is in our Rental Rookie Pro community. So we have over at Rental Rookie, we have a kind of elite membership, I would say, community. And this is one of the spreadsheets that you get in that community. And you can already see that it goes into a little bit more detail. So if I would decide at this level, right? And again, this is the analyzer, guys, that I use week in and week out. I do not use the Pro Property Analyzer week in, week out. I use the basic one because most of the time I'm looking for a quick, raw, dirty ROI, right? What's it going to be? Give me an idea, a general idea of where it's going to be. And then once you make that decision of moving forward, that's when we start to use the more detailed one. This takes into like rent revenue assumptions. Again, we see the vacancy rate here, annual increases in rent. If you plan on increasing the rent, you can put that in here. Your financing strategy, again, goes in here, interest rates, implied LTVs, your cash required. So it calculates a lot of the same things, but it brings in some different elements, right? So it starts to calculate taxes and depreciation. So you can put in your effective tax rate, your depreciation, your land allocation for depreciation, your regular depreciation that we're allowed to do with the IRS. So that is taken into consideration here. Also, again, gives you that cash on cash return on investment. Also includes things like deferred maintenance costs. So if you need to go in and take care of some stuff up front, you can include that. And then operating expenses. So for the most part, most of this is right, except when it gets into maintenance and repairs. And that's where I would put in the CapEx things. So then once you start to really kind of dive into looking at the property and the age of some of the more expensive things, that's where you can start actually putting some of that stuff in there. And so you put all of that stuff in there, and it brings you over to the executive summary that gives you a little bit more, again, information. You do get that 5 and 10 year outlook, gives you some of the key property metrics, gives you kind of an overview of cash flow summaries, key assumptions. So it just goes into a little bit more depreciation, write-offs, those sort of things that actually help you when it comes to taxes. So this is just a glimpse at our Pro Property Analyzer that just goes into a little bit more detail. But for the long and the short of it, this is the one that I'm using week in, week out. So questions, comments, throw them in the comment section, and I can get those answered. I'm going to take a drink. Man, I have been tired today. This whole 9-month pregnancy thing is kicking my butt these days. But questions, comments, what do you think? If you have questions about how to use the property analyzer, throw them in there. I hope that, you're kind of able to see how quick and easy it is to be able to use. And again, we do have the different sheets. So we have the multi-unit sheet where you can go in and throw in the information here. We have the student rental sheet that you can throw information in here as well. And again, it just gives you that quick return on investment. So I'm really hoping, I'm not seeing too many comments or questions here. Please feel free to put those in. Kim, thank you. Good question. So you're asking you create a separate spreadsheet for each property and save them somewhere. So that's a good question because this is something that I didn't used to do and I have started doing. So, I used to go through and I've run numbers on hundreds of properties over the last 5 years. And so for the longest time, I would run numbers on properties, and ones that didn't meet our goal or standard, I would completely trash. If there were some that were borderline, then Kirk and I would sit down and have a conversation about it. And then if there were ones that we wanted to pursue, then I would typically, I would save the spreadsheet somewhere, or I would print it out. That way I had a copy of it as I was, moving forward and looking for more information and calling and asking for verification of numbers and those sorts of things. Now, what I'll tell you, Kim, and for everyone else that's still on here, is that I have started anytime that I run numbers on properties. And now, again, I'm better at determining when, on first glance, if I think it could be a good deal or not. I've started pretty much saving a lot of property analysis that I do, because what Kirk and I learned last year, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast at the end of 2017, is in the very beginning, we were fearful to throw lowball offers out there. We felt, we thought about the sellers too much and we didn't want to offend them. And I think there is still a lot of truth in that, where you don't want to come in and totally offend sellers. But at the same time, what we've learned is that you never know why somebody needs to sell a property or what their situation is like. And so, basically now what we do is we go in and we run numbers. And if it kind of works at the numbers that we're given, then, we generally move forward, whatever. But if it, doesn't, so in the case of our example, where this was a 9% ROI, we would sit here and play around with the numbers and figure out, okay, where does it have to be in order for us to make the return that we want to do, right? What is that target acquisition price? Or where do we have to make sure we get some seller credit, or do this, or get rents raised if we're able to, or whatever that is. And we play around with the numbers and we see, and then I'll save that, because what we have found is that you just never know. And I have run numbers on properties, and then a year later, the property is still for sale and we've gone after it and bought it. And then I had to go back and I'm like, oh, what were the numbers that I ran a year ago? I'd love to know what they were, because that'd be really good for negotiations. And I didn't have them. So Kim, I've started saving or printing pretty much any property analysis that I do. And so depending on where you are in your journey, I would also recommend doing that as well. And you can organize it however you want. If you want different folders of different areas or different price ranges or different ROI, these are analysis that came up with, 10% or below. Here, these were between 10 and 20. These were, 20 and above, but I would recommend saving those. Melissa, you said looking at a place, we just got an accepted offer. Yay! Happy to say we will be at around 12 to 15% depending on renovation costs. That's awesome! Congratulations! That is so cool. So yeah, hopefully, I don't know if you were able to use the analyzer prior to making the offer, but definitely a tool for you to be able to use moving forward if you decide that you want to grow that. But that is awesome. Definitely keep us updated, send pictures or keep us updated. I don't know if you are a member of our Rental Rookie private Facebook group, but if any of you that are here, that aren't members of our private Facebook group, we do have just a plain Rental Rookie community that's super active. We've got hundreds of people in there, and it's just a great resource. And a lot of times people are sharing what they're doing and sharing success stories. So if you're not a member of that, definitely check that out. Check that out as well. So definitely, we'd love to kind of keep up with you and find out how the process goes. So if there aren't any other questions, let me know. Again, if you're watching this not live, please go ahead and still put the questions in the comment section and I will get back to you. Tomorrow, we're going to be going over things of the what not to do nature when it comes to analyzing properties. So kind of mistakes to avoid, sins you don't want to commit when it comes to analyzing properties. Sometimes it's great to learn all the things you should do, but then I think it's also great to learn from the things that we shouldn't do. So that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow night on the training. And tomorrow will be the last day. We'll be wrapping up the 5-day challenge. I hope that, again, that you have been getting some golden nuggets each night from this training. If you can walk away, honestly, with one new insight, one piece of advice, one new tool or tactic or strategy or thing each night, that's really, really big for you and your journey. And I hope that you continue to do the assignments. So what I'd like you to do for tonight or for tomorrow, take our analyzer and just pull up, get on realtor.com or Zillow, whichever site that you like, Trulia, and search in your local area, just where you live, and just start kind of playing around with numbers. Start throwing numbers in here. Start seeing, see first off, maybe if there's any current rentals that are for sale, whether it's a multi-unit or even a single family. See if there's any that are for sale that you could pull in so that you don't have to do too much research with rental incomes. If not, and you want to play around with looking up rental incomes in your area as well, you can do that. But just start playing around with it. That's what I want to say. Play around with it with 5 different properties and just get a feel for how it works, get a feel for looking at the listings and putting in the numbers. Because again, like I said, once you get this down, I can do this in probably 90 seconds flat and know whether or not it's a property that I want to go after. Melissa, you asked what's the best way to guesstimate rent. I would say what you want to do is get on, take maybe, just for, I guess, quick purposes, take 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, maybe even a half hour, jump on things like Craigslist. If you have a Facebook marketplace for like property, real estate, I know in our area, we have like a for rent to own or for sale group where people list rentals, people list properties that are for sale. So you can look around on there or even just on like Realtor or Zillow. And what I would do is I would get in and instead of looking up properties for sale, look up properties for rent and just kind of skim through and start to get an idea of what, the specs of properties are, so what are 3-bedroom houses renting for? What are 2-bedroom houses renting for? What are apartments renting for versus an actual standalone house? And just spend a little time kind of perusing, and that's going to give you a good idea of a place to start for guesstimating rent. Now, one of the things I harp on a lot in our pro community is the kind of becoming a student of your market. So one thing, and I'm a big proponent of this, is taking basically the tip that I just gave you and maximizing it to where you are analyzing all the different kind of niches of your community, whether it's like jobs and infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. But I would say when it comes to rent, just spend a little bit of time actually looking to see what people are asking for rent. And then that can give you an idea of, okay, if I'm, analyzing a 3-bedroom house, I found 5 properties that are in the, 800 to 1,000 range, depending on the quality or the location. So that gives you kind of a good place to start, just for kind of running quick numbers. So hopefully that helps as well. Any other questions, throw them in and I will answer them. And hopefully you all enjoyed this and will be on with me live tomorrow night for our 5th and final day of the 5-day challenge. So thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.